in the shadows of a forgotten town, where poverty and prejudice walked hand in hand. One man carried the weight of both. Walter Greene, an elderly black factory worker, had little to his name except a heart so vast it could shelter others. Years ago, he stumbled upon two abandoned children, Eli and Grace, shivering in the cold night with no one to claim them. Though mocked for raising children that weren't his, Walter gave them food, shelter, and the priceless lessons of dignity and courage. They grew, left, and made lives of their own, while Walter quietly aged in hardship. But fate had its own cruel design. When Walter was framed for a crime he didn't commit, his past act of kindness would return in the most powerful way. Walter Greene worked in a rusty old factory, his hands hardened by years of labor, his back bent from the burden of survival. One winter night, as he walked home with little more than stale bread in his bag, he heard muffled cries behind an alley dumpster. Two pale, shivering children, one boy, one girl huddled together, wrapped in rags. The boy shielded his sister as best as he could. "Please, sir, we ain't stole nothing," the boy whispered, fearful. Walter's heart broke. He saw their hollow cheeks, their lips trembling from hunger. He had barely enough for himself, but in that moment, he chose differently. He extended his hand. "Come on, kids. Tonight, you eat." From that day on, Walter became their guardian. He named the boy Eli and the girl Grace after his late grandparents. Raising them was no easy task. Neighbors whispered, "Why's he wasting food on them? Ain't even his blood." Others mocked him for taking in two white children when the world already judged him harshly. But Walter never cared. He taught Eli to read under the dim light of an oil lamp, his calloused finger tracing letters. He braided Grace's hair before school. Even though his hands were clumsy, he worked double shifts to buy their notebooks, going hungry so they could eat. "Dignity ain't what the world gives you," he told them one night. "It's what you carry inside, no matter how poor you are." Years later, both children left town with dreams in their eyes. Eli carried his father's words into law school, and Grace carried them into journalism. Walter stood at the train station, waving with tears in his eyes, whispering, "Go make me proud." He returned to an empty house, poorer than ever, but richer in spirit. What Walter didn't know then was that this single act of kindness would one day save his life. The years rolled on, and Walter's health began to fail. His factory job was the only thing keeping his roof standing. His boss, Mr. Harlon, was a cruel, sharp-eyed man who despised Walter for his skin color and his quiet dignity. One evening, the factory safe went missing, a large sum of money. Harlon wasted no time. "It was him," he shouted, pointing at Walter. "Who else has been here for decades, bitter and broke? He stole it." Walter was stunned. "I ain't touched a dime, sir." But the police came anyway. His hands were shackled. The town looked on in silence, some even nodding as if to say, "Of course, it was him." In court, the evidence was twisted, planted by Harlon, documents forged, testimonies bought. The prosecutor painted Walter as a bitter old man who had finally snapped. Walter sat alone at the defense table, heart heavy. He had no money for a lawyer, no family to turn to, or so he thought. The judge's gavel struck hard. "If found guilty, Walter Greene, you will serve life imprisonment." As he bowed his head in despair, a voice rang out from the back. "Your Honor, the defense has counsel." The courtroom doors opened. Eli, now a young man in a sharp suit, strode in. Behind him came Grace, clutching a notepad, her press badge glinting. Walter's eyes widened in disbelief. His children had returned. Eli rose in the courtroom, his voice firm, his presence commanding. "I will represent Walter Greene, the man who raised me, not as a charity case, but because he is innocent." The room buzzed with whispers. Grace moved to the benches, scribbling notes, her eyes fixed on Harlon. The trial became a battlefield. Eli dismantled the prosecution's arguments one by one. He exposed inconsistencies, false witnesses, and missing evidence. Grace published scathing articles, revealing how Harlon had a history of exploiting workers and silencing dissent. One evening, Grace uncovered records. Harlon had been laundering money from the factory for years. She stormed into the newsroom, adrenaline rushing, her headline blazing, "Factory boss framed worker in theft to hide embezzlement." Back in court, Eli held the newspaper high. "Your Honor, the true thief is sitting right there." He pointed directly at Harlon. Gasps filled the courtroom. Harlon's smug grin faltered. He shouted, "Lies. They're lies." But his face betrayed fear. The judge demanded order. "If these allegations prove true, this trial will take a very different turn." Walter sat silently, tears pooling in his eyes. For the first time in months, he felt hope. His children were fighting for him with the same fire he once instilled in them. The final day of the trial arrived. Eli's closing argument was not just legal, it was personal. "Years ago," Eli began, his voice steady but emotional, "a man with nothing gave everything to two children society had abandoned. He was mocked, insulted, but he chose kindness. That man is Walter Greene. Today, we don't just defend his innocence, we defend the truth that goodness cannot be silenced." Grace stepped forward, holding photographic proof of Harlon's transactions, signed under his name. The evidence was undeniable. The judge leaned forward. "Walter Greene, the charges against you are dismissed. You are free to go." The courtroom erupted. Grace rushed into Walter's arms. Eli placed a steady hand on his father's shoulder and whispered, "We're home, Dad." Walter wept. He had given them everything when he had nothing. Now, they had returned to give him back his dignity and freedom. Harlon was led away in handcuffs, his empire collapsing. The same people who once mocked Walter now looked at him with shame. Unable to meet his gaze, Walter walked out of the courthouse. Not a broken old man, but a father whose legacy of kindness had returned full circle. Eli and Grace flanked him on each side, declaring to the world, "This is our dad." The sun broke through the clouds that day, warm and golden. For Walter Greene, redemption wasn't just found, it was repaid.